Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, baseball fans. Welcome back to the Barstool Baseball Show. It is Friday. This is Carl, and I am joined by our American League in-house expert, Chris Castellani. This is a delightful show. We're going to go heavy Tigers.
Yeah, which I feel like is rare and something I did not expect we would ever have to do, have the fortune to do so far this season. But yes, the Tigers, to their credit, have made themselves a story this year. Now, some of that in the last few days has been very negative, but we are talking about a team 2 games out of first place. So yeah, I'll definitely looking forward to that.
You're a little banged up too. I think the audience should pat you on the back for this one. Tigers are knocking on the door. I know you're not feeling well. If you want to take, you said no fucking way am I sitting this one out, Carl.
No, I can't think of a podcast or anything I've done at Barstool where I've been too sick not to do it. I mean, I think that is one of the luxuries of the job. Like, I mean, I'm sitting behind my computer. Like, I think I'll be all right. But yeah, they consider this my flu game of the Barstool baseball universe, I feel like.
Absolutely. And for our viewers, yes, I am in my father's garage. You will notice there's some fine stuff behind me as my dad pulls up now. He's in a Chevy Suburban. Or is it my mother? Somebody's confused. We're going to have a great show here, guys. We really are. These Friday shows are coming together magnificently. Wednesday's National League. Obviously, Monday, Power Rankings. That's the big boy. That's the one we all get excited for. We're rallied around. This American League deep dive, though, let's just play off some of the stories that have come up, throughout the conversations this year. And there's a couple there's a series the Tigers and the Rangers are playing simultaneously. So this is just perfect timing. I want to start, though, with the Tigers. It's your bread and butter. You've earned this. We're on the national stage here, pal. I mean, you're not talking on the phone to the local audience after. You're not wearing the blazer in section 138 or whatever it is. Like, this is an opportunity for you to, like, make other people care. Like, there's 29 other fan bases out there. Let me start this. Why should somebody actually, like, respect it? Are they at the point where when I see you on the schedule, I go, do I respect the Tigers yet? Do you want people to feel that way about this team, or are you guys still learning that shit?
I think as an opponent, they are very similar to what they were 2 years ago, which is they may not win, but they're going to give you a game. This is not, no disrespect, but this is not the A's or the Royals, one of those teams where when they come into town, you're like, all right, if we're not winning at least 2, something's wrong. This team will give you a game. Now, I think we had both best and worst case scenario with this team in the last week, where I was at Comerica for the last few games of the series against Chicago and the first game of the series against Texas, and in which they rallied back in the 7th inning, back-to-back days. Green was looking great. Torkelson's looking better. You have Zach McKinstry, who out of nowhere has been just the biggest stud in the world for this ball club. And all of a sudden, in the back of my head, and I was aware of run differential, I was aware of the division they play in, but there was a brief moment where I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe. Because all year I've been like, no chance. Look, this is fun while it lasted. They're going to fall behind. They're going to hit a wall. But I got this just brief glimpse in my head of, and I'm mad at myself for doing it. Said, nobody expected anything out of the 06 team either. And literally the next day, they get shut out by the Rangers. And then Eduardo Rodriguez might be out for a while with a finger injury. Riley Green with a stress fracture in his leg. So all of a sudden that hope is gone. But I'm not claiming end of the world here, because I do think the identity of this team is one that's going to more often play competitive baseball. And truly, compared to last year, like, that's kind of all I can ask for. Losing Riley Green is devastating. And like, that has to be, we could do a power ranking sometime of just worst feelings as a baseball fan. I feel like top 5 is when your franchise player gets injured. Like when this is your guy. Like, I used to not get it. I remember a couple of years ago, Aaron Judge got injured and the Yankees fans did like a prayer circle at Yankee Stadium. Looking back on it, I would have joined in. That's like that. I totally understand that.
No, I would not have let you join in. We have lines to draw, and I'm drawing the line there. We're not doing prayer circles. Although at the same time, when Mark Pryor took a line drive off his elbow in 06, shattered the bone after he had come back from, like, breaking his rib cage and stuff. That was the time. Yeah, maybe I do a prayer circle. Maybe I would have gotten weird. Who do you Okay, let's give some credit, though, right? Like, you feel good as a Tigers fan this late in the season for the first time ever. So the first person you would like to say thank you to for this is
Scott Harris.
Okay.
Because, and the reason
team president.
Yes, team president of baseball ops, hired last September, maybe even late August, following the firing of Al Avila. The reason I say that is because I'm confident. Well, we've seen Torque look better. We've seen Green look way better when he's been healthy. I'm confident those guys would not be putting up the numbers they're putting up if Avila was still here. That last year's offense and subsequently since what's that?
I just don't. What does Al Avila have to do with like Zach McKinstry playing well?
Well, first of all, Al Avila would have never acquired Zach McKinstry, so that's step number one. We'd have Jonathan Scope getting the majority of those reps.
Okay,
I think
that's good.
I'm a firm believer in culture. I think that if the stench is rotten, guys are not going to be willing to come to the ballpark and put it, and maybe not put in 100%, but I feel like the tools to make these guys successful have not been there. When you look at the really good organizations in baseball right now, yeah, a lot of them have really good players, but they have a system in place where they can take a guy's ceiling and adjust it and make it higher. I feel like that's what we've gotten. When you look at this year's team, I don't believe that it's a coincidence that last year's team, which was shut out 22 times, all of a sudden they are chasing less, walking more. Now, they're still, I believe, a bottom 7-8 offense in the league, but they were at the bottom of the barrel in every statistical category last year until maybe the last 2 weeks of the season when they bizarrely got a little bit hot. I think the culture is better. And ultimately, when you look at the players they've added and the trades they've made, Scott Harris did the one thing that you want your president to do in between seasons, which is he made this team better. Last year, they had a bullpen that was top 10 in baseball. Andrew Chafin, gone. Michael Fulmer, traded. Joe Jimenez, traded. Gregory Soto, traded. Well, guess what? The bullpen's actually been every bit as good as it was a season ago. You have an elite, and I mean a fucking elite closer in Alex Lang. Like, Craig Kimbrell 2.0 with that breaking ball. The way he can spin that shit and
I'm reeling you back in, big fella, because that's bold talk you just gave Alex Lang, who's in his first season of being really good, maybe his second season of being valuable. Craig Kimbrell's is an arguably Hall of Famer, brother. Go listen to Wednesday show. But do you feel that strongly about him? Am I wrong? Do you feel that strongly about him? Seriously?
I believe he's a top 5 closer in Major League Baseball.
Thank you.
So I can't put him number one. I don't have him ahead of Felix Bautista. But when you look at the numbers right now, I mean, if you want to go with saves, you can. He's 10 for 11 in saves, hasn't blown one since April. 12.3 strikeouts per nine. He's getting more swings and misses with that breaking ball than almost any other pitch in baseball. I mean, even last year, where he was good, not great, but last year, outside of Edwin Diaz's slider, I believe his knuckle curveball got the second highest swing and miss rate of any pitch in baseball. So that's, and in the 8th inning, you have Jason Foley, who's been fantastic as well. So there's obviously reasons to be hopeful. I think, you look at some of the trades they've made, they've upgraded, they've gotten the most out of Erod, they've gotten the most out of this bullpen. I know it sounds irrational as a baseball fan, because you're right. Al Avila never suited up. Al Avila never put on the uniforms, but I think you can agree with me to a certain extent. When Theo Epstein arrived in Chicago, even if it didn't result in wins, there was something there where you're like, I trust the direction of this organization. And it took a while. That's how I feel right now with Scott Harris, where I'm like, and I've said this in my videos a million times, you can lose baseball games and still play winning baseball. The biggest reason why this team has lost games this year is because they're just not as talented as the teams they're playing. Like, that they have a roster that needs upgrading, but they're doing, it sounds elementary, but they're doing shit that they didn't do last year. Hitting the cutoff man, drawing walks. The one thing they need to improve on is hitting with runners in scoring position. They can't do that, but is that a category that we can say stuff about? Let's just slow down for a second about runners in scoring position with the Tigers. That's a huge problem for them? Coming into yesterday's game, I don't know what happened yesterday. Well, I mean, I know what happened, but I don't know what the numbers are. Coming into yesterday's game, this team was 9 for 56 with the bases loaded this season.
That's really bad. That's obviously really bad, because there's nowhere to put you, so they got to throw you something.
Right. I think, where that
and I saw I'm sorry, I want to give some context too, because I saw the Padres I think they were dead last in runners in scoring position, but then closer towards the top without runners in scoring position. It's a unique statistic, because when things go well, you point to we hit well with runners in scoring position. Yeah. And when things go poorly, it's like, well, we just don't hit when runners are in scoring position. But then when you stand back from 30,000 feet and listen to the statisticians talk, you're like, they'll say it doesn't matter. Like, if a runner's on second base, but the player will say it matters. So my point of dressing all this up is there's so much vague, I guess maybe sentiment surrounding when a runner is in scoring position, does it change the at bat? And so you're saying the Tigers struggle when we get to this situation.
Yeah. I mean, my theory on it is not that they tense up or anything like that. I think that this year's team, unlike last year's team, has multiple players capable of drawing walks, hitting singles, hitting for power. Those guys get on base. McKinstry, Green, even Torkelson with the struggles, I think has drawn more walks in the last week than almost anybody. The problem is, once you get past that first 5, then all of a sudden you're getting to some guys who just are not productive players right now. Like you get to your, Miguel Cabrera's got a 400 something OPS, or you go to some of your guys who just cannot hit. I think that adding to the roster, obviously in the offseason, will be imperative. I do think there's a few pieces down in the minor leagues, but yeah, the only reason I view it as a problem is because it's a reflection of the fact that the roster offensively isn't super talented, but and it's a minor consolation prize, but at least they're getting guys on base. At least they're competitive. I mean, last year it was shocking. I believe there was
Sure. Hey, don't go down that path. You guys got shut out 22 times last year. We know, but I guess my question would be like, are you guys that much better? Or were you guys just that bad then?
Water has found its level to a certain extent, but I do believe the team as a whole is better. I think that if you played out last year's season 100 times, it was worst case scenario with the injuries, with the underperformance. But I do feel like, based on what I've seen from Green and McKinstry and some guys in that bullpen, I'm willing to venture this team is substantially better than they were a year ago at this time.
Okay, so Scott Harris gets credit one. I suppose, is there a player who you think is underrated or a person who deserves more credit then?
Well, I mean, it sounds crazy what I'm about to say, but when you look at how he compares to some other utility men in baseball, it can't be overstated how good Zach McKinstry has been for this team. Like, it's gone beyond just a neat little story at this point.
Let's do like a Zach McKinstry background quick.
Yes.
Okay, so he was a high school draft pick, I believe, to the Dodgers, or had come up with their system.
Actually, no, he went to Central Michigan, where I went, and he was a 33rd round pick by the Dodgers. Yes.
Okay. Came up with the Dodgers as a utility, kind of interesting second base, maybe a little outfield, third base, but mostly in the infield. Very hard to crack with the Dodgers. I don't know how he ended up with the Cubs, but he had a cup of coffee with the Cubs as like a rebound guy. Scott Harris would have been with the Cubs when they acquired him there, and he immediately got playing time. That was, I believe, in 2000, either 19 or 20, maybe 21, to be honest with you.
It was actually last year. It was 22.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Time flies, man. Yeah.
All right. So anyways, I've got brief familiarity with him, but I just understand his background to be somebody that, like, if he got a chance in regular playing time in kind of a low pressure environment, he's got a ton of talent. So this is a guy Scott Harris has acquired to the Tigers. He had a great throw yesterday. He's made some impression, but you're going to say he's your more or most underrated guy.
I would say so, because I think legitimately where he ranks among American League second baseman or utility guys, he's in top 5 in WRC plus right now with a fair amount of at-bats. I mean, he's played 47 games, and just the ascension. And this is what I love, because I think that when you look at the great organizations here, a lot of them just have that ability. Max Muncy is the prime example. He was an afterthought with the A's, goes to the Dodgers. All of a sudden, this guy is like one of the biggest on-base machines in baseball. Scott Harris saw that McKinstry, for all his struggles, and last year with the Cubs, he hit 206 with a 633 OPS. I mean, nothing special at all. And the one thing he saw, this guy sees a lot of pitches. And now he's gotten to Detroit. Those numbers are way up, 288 average. He's got an on-base percentage of 400 right now, Carl. And he's just this kind of scrappy second baseman, OPS plus of 134. I mean, if they got him, with the story of how they got him with about 5 days left before the season started. Essentially, and they won't admit it because Jonathan Scope had such a bad spring training. I don't think they had any faith that he could get at bats against righties. So they just got McKinstry off the scrap heap. He's been fantastic. And I think he's going to become a fan favorite here too. Obviously there's the Michigan connection because he went to CMU, but I think the fans in Detroit love scrappy underdogs. This guy fits the mold. I think he's been fantastic for him.
So then meanwhile, in the AL Centrals, we sit here early June, our first episode of June. By the way, congratulations, 14 episodes in May. That's a big month for us.
Nice.
So as we sit here in June, though, relative to the rest of the division, are you guys are what, 2 games out?
We're 2 games out, yeah.
Okay, so then give me your just relative strength to the other. I guess we don't have to talk about the Royals. No disrespect to the Royals, right. But towards the folks that you think can win that division, I think if we can still say the White Sox are going to linger for a little bit, you're not ready to rule them out, right?
I'm still not.
Okay. So then obviously the Twins and the Guardians.
Yeah.
So how do you feel? June 1st, how do you feel?
Those teams don't scare me 1-to-1. What scares me more is the schedule they have coming up against other teams. Like, I feel like they're going to fall behind with the stretch they have coming up. Like the Guardians always beat the Tigers, but the Tigers have played them really tough this year. Tigers are yet to play the Twins. So really, I mean, everything I'm saying is kind of a moot point because we're going to find out if you tread water for the next 2-3 weeks. You got the Twins in a 3-game set, I believe, come mid-June mid-June. Starts at Minnesota, 4-game set on the 15th. So like, I think it's kind of ridiculous at this point to say that anyone in the AL Central scares you. I mean, it's a bunch of 500 / sub 500 teams. I think that the one strength the Tigers will have, and they'll continue to look for, is if you get to, I don't believe, I could be wrong, I do not believe the Tigers have lost a game this year in which they've led after the 7th inning. They had one game go to extras against Houston and Alex Lang, where Alex Lang blew a save, but they ended up winning it in extras. I think that the key to Detroit's success going forward, and it's a long shot, dude, is finding some length and some depth out of their starting pitching, because Erod is out now. So your starting rotation is, I can't be any more blunt. It's bad, dude. I mean, you got Matt Boyd, who can't pitch third time through the order. You got Joey Wentz, who's got an ERA close to 7. Alex Faedo, who I like, but is essentially a rookie. Turnbull's out, Manning's out, Screwball's out, Mize is out, Erod's out. I mean, it's just Bo Brisky's out. I mean, it's unbelievable the amount of pitching injuries they've had.
Okay, so all starting pitching, you're saying. I know who these guys are. I'm just taking the perspective of someone who doesn't know shit. Casey Mize, first overall pick, he's out. Fucking could you go through the other names you just read off? Obviously, Eduardo.
Yeah, well, the 3-headed monster that came up through the system a few years ago of top 20 prospects was Mize, Casey Mize, Matt Manning, and Tarek Skubal. The only one of those who has shown like genuine brilliance has been Skubal. He'll be back soon. And I do think he had a sub-3 FIP last year and a high strikeout rate. Like, I think he could be a number 1 type, like ace level pitcher. He's just got to stay on the field. Manning got a toe injury, his second start, and hasn't come back. Mize has had Tommy John. He's out for the year. Spencer Turnbull threw a no-hitter, is responsible for getting hired. Started the year in the rotation, has a neck injury, and is coming back from Tommy John. So he's been sent down to the minors. I mean, it's a real mess there. And I think ultimately they've been able to tread water because Eduardo Rodriguez, to his credit, has been brilliant this season. Not just in terms of low ERA. He has eaten up innings. I mean, 7-8 innings to start. You don't have that, kind of pillar anymore that can give you those deep innings. So this bullpen is going to be taxed going forward. I don't know if they can hold their own, but I can positively say it's June 1st and there's meaningful baseball to be played. I mean, you can call it fugazi with the record. You know what? As somebody who's experienced some hard times as a fan, I really don't care. Give me 2 games back in June. Even if they collapse, I've seen enough from the organization. From what I've heard, there's been updates all around to the analytics department. They have nutritionists now. Like, there has been a change within the organization that has me excited about the future.
You sound like an Angels fan on May 21st last year. Okay,
yeah.
We
didn't collapse the way they did. And if we no, that's fair. That's fair. I acknowledge, I even wrote a blog where I said we're going to look back at this stretch and laugh at how excited we were. But considering the last 2 years, Carl, we started 9-23. It's like your season's over in April at that point. Just to have squeeze some juice out of this has been exciting.
Yeah. So one thing I don't want to play too much of I don't know if it's contrarian. I just like the other side of this stuff, because to say to have Eduardo out blows, right? And your points are correct. He's throwing 7-8 deep. But then if you scale back to the original intention of signing this dude was that like he could rebound and you could flip him for some prospects. Okay. So now what? You said finger injury and the trade deadline is at the end of July. So is he going to miss how many? Couple starts? Because what I'm saying is if he could miss a couple starts, come back and give you 1 or 2 more showings of tape and then hit the trade market, his value is already through the roof. The risk that he would hang a couple bad starts and then the value would go down. So like, does a finger injury where he misses a couple starts, he's healthy, then you can make a bigger pitch at the deadline. Hey, shoulder's healthy, body's healthy, you got a little bit of rest in the middle of the season. Like there's no fatigue issue because of the finger. You're going to get 22 great starts from him. I don't know. Is that a good sales pitch? Or
no, I actually did think about that, because I had people in my mentions being like, "Oh, we're not going to be able to trade him now, or his value's gone down." I said, "No, it hasn't. As long as he's healthy, come deadline time, there's a whole lot you could sell." Last year he had a 4.05 ERA. His career ERA is 4.02. Right now he's got a 2.13 ERA. His WHIP is well under 1. Strikeout rate nearly a hitter an inning. Like, FIP is in the low threes. There's a lot you can sell here. As long as he's healthy at the deadline, you could sell the fact that you are trading a pitcher who right now at age 30 is pitching the best baseball of his career. I don't think anyone's going to look at, oh, that finger injury. Now, what worries me is I've heard a million different diagnoses on, fake doctors on Twitter trying to diagnose what's up with Eduardo Rodriguez. The Tigers initially said they're going to give him one start off and then he'll go back into a throwing program. I have heard up to 8 weeks. So it is hard for me to have any gauge on when he'll be back. It's a fucking pulley injury. Like, I have a hard time believing he'll be out for that long. I could be wrong. But I have thought about that, though, where as much as I like Erod and I've enjoyed watching Erod pitch this year, there have already been signs of some decline. He's been fine his last 3 starts, but he had a 6-start stretch where he was the best pitcher in baseball, like legitimately. He's come back down to earth a little bit. I do feel like to a certain extent, yeah, I mean, you don't want to see anybody get injured, but I have thought like his value will remain very high considering how he's pitched this year. And for the most part in his career, he's been relatively durable. Since 2016, you got 20 starts, 24, 23, 34, 31. I know he had the injury in the COVID year, but I don't really count that. So I feel like there's definitely a lot of appealing things that you could pitch about Eduardo Rodriguez, even with the injury right now.
I got a team you can trade him to. He just played him. Do the Rangers have a need to get just like another quality arm in case the wheels start to fall off of one of their guys? Because the issue for the Rangers, and I want to frame this correctly, is not whether or not they're going to the playoffs. They're clearly a top team in baseball. They've put together a great roster. Bruce Bochy's doing the right things. So now I think where you're at when you get to that level is we have to make sure that we're home during the ALDS and we don't have to play in the first series. Right. You have to be one of the top 2 teams in the playoff scenario because first and second seeds advance and host the DS. And so to them, that means obviously you have to win the division against the Astros. Mm-hmm. The Central isn't really going to be a factor in who gets an ALDS spot. You're going to assume the winner of the East gets one. And then the winner of the West is going to get the other spot. So there are severe repercussions to your World Series odds by winning your division. And so to say to the Rangers, even though they've been lukewarm at best this late in the season for years now, the opportunity should not be, let's just go to the playoffs and see what happens. Like, you should want to win the division. That should be the focus right now. So with that in mind, looking at the trade deadline, like, is it a guy like Eduardo Rodriguez who can give you good starts, but then when you go to a DS, you're kind of like still looking at him as the same as you would any of those other guys in the rotation, Chris? You know that. Is that worth a move for the Rangers?
I think it's
kind of mirror what I'm trying to say is I want to mirror where the Rangers are headed. You guys had just played each other, and let's spread it around a little bit.
I think they'd be better suited adding more pieces to their bullpen, but I bet they go out and get a starting pitcher. Erod with the contract and everything. I feel like somebody like a Giolito might be a little bit more feasible for them. I think they might be more inclined for a rental at this point at the deadline. Cause Evaldi's been fantastic and Gray's been very good. Like, your rotation has been solid. So much of it as well. The big mystery box here is like, what happens with DeGrom? If DeGrom is back in July and pitching great, I don't think they're going to feel a need to go get a starting pitcher. But like, Erod's going to be a hot commodity at the deadline. I think the Rangers' perception of themselves has changed this season. They remind me so much of the Mets last year, where early they spent a ton of money. You're playing in the same division as the defending champs, and all of a sudden early in the year you get off to this hot start, and we can't just be content making the wild card. And ultimately, what happened to the Mets team. I think the Rangers are going to have that same mentality where it's like, if we need to go all out at the deadline to beat Houston, we'll do it, because we do not want to play those 2-3 extra games in the wild card round. So yeah, I think it's definitely possible. They have the money to do it. Obviously, they've spent to take on that contract. There is a potential opt out if Erod were to continue to pitch great, but I think ultimately. It would not shock me at all if they went out and got Erod. It's possible. And they also have, to their credit, a really solid farm system that they've been quietly building up here for the last several years. They have the pieces to be able to acquire somebody like an Erod, which I feel like you can't say about some other teams.
Yeah, I believe they have 4 or 5 prospects in the top 100, and then probably another 3 or 4 in the second wave. Yeah. So then after watching them, you've watched them compete against your boys closely now. So we talk a lot about the Rangers recently in this programming, and we've been trying to raise awareness cautiously. I think it started with us talking about Bruce Bochy. Yeah. You're like, man, he's capable. Just give him a chance. And now, so it's been a couple of weeks now. They're up to number 2 in our power rankings. And I remember the first time I introduced him in the power rankings, people were like, whoa, Rangers are here. That was a couple of weeks ago. And so now we're really progressing, into the story of like, fuck, man, like the Rangers are a team we very much can see in October doing a lot of damage. So after competing against them, my first question is like, is it as legit as we say? Like, do they look like the second best team in baseball after playing them? And then what would be like huge weakness?
If the season ended today, which it doesn't, there's still a long grind and a lot of innings still to be pitched. If the season ended today, I think they'd be my pick to win the whole thing. I really like this team a lot, and I'm mad at myself because coming into the year, I said they'll be all right, they'll be fine, they have a good team. I didn't think they would come close to Houston, and I thought they had a chance of making the playoffs, but I had them third in their own division. I didn't think they'd be better than Seattle. I didn't think they'd be better than Houston. I think it's been best case scenario in many ways. Seager, when he's been healthy, is just beating the absolute piss out of the ball. I mean, he took a hanging breaking ball from Matt Boyd on Memorial Day, and that ball's still traveling. Semien is playing literally at an MVP level when you look at wins above replacement. That lineup, that's what scares me is I think that you can throw your best pitchers out there in a postseason series. That lineup is relentless, dude. I mean, 1 through 9, they have guys who come off the bench and can pinch hit and just slap the ball. I think that it's scary just navigating through them first, second, third time through the order. Their issue will be their pen. It's not that it's awful. It's just, when I think of great bullpens that have won World Series, like I think of like the Astros last year, where once you get to the 6th inning, you're fucked. Like, I don't believe they have that piece. Now they could acquire that piece if need be, if the opportunity is there, maybe an Alex Lang type of pitcher, if you want to really go all out at the deadline. But there's an aura, especially when you watch them in person. I think you'll agree with me on this. There's an aura that great baseball teams give off. Like that team, when you watch them take the field, you're like, that team has no doubt that they're winning today's game. And I think that having Bochy in the dugout is a huge reflection of that. But as I brought up before, there's a lot of veterans on that team that have made deep postseason runs. These Seager, Semien, Robbie Grossman, Evaldi, these guys know how to win. And to me, the big X factor of their season, the guy that has stood out to me, not just as a good piece, but a future star, is Josh Young. Watching him play third for the Rangers, at Comerica, and just the way he performed, it reminded me a lot of, I think it was 9 years ago. The Tigers were playing the Rockies. Tigers were in first place, just beating the piss out of Colorado. But Colorado had this one third baseman who was making every single play. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? This guy's going to be a stud.
Nolan Arenado.
And it was Arenado.
Yeah,
I'm not saying Young is going to be Arenado, but he's got rookie of the year potential and at some point all-star potential.
Like, you're old enough where like Nolan Arenado is like, you were like young when he was coming up, right?
Yeah, I was a senior in high school and when they played that series, yeah.
Nolan Arenado roomed with Dominic Altabelli in Casper, Wyoming. Dominic Altabelli is one of my closest friends from the Illinois baseball team. And he had to like drive him to the field and shit and like take ground balls with him and stuff. And they had drafted him as a shortstop. We're moving him over to third base. And we were joking because we were like, yo, so after his rookie season, or they played rookie ball short season, short A. We were like sitting around Thanksgiving afterwards, like, hey, so what, like, it was like something like, are they that good? Is the high school kid that good? The California high school player, Dom was like first team all Big Ten third baseman, was like just a fucking stud in college, cool dude. Like whatever. Like, as far as I was concerned, it's just a tremendous, great college player. Is like, yo, so are these California high school kids that good? And he was like, I played with him for about 5 minutes before I was convinced I'd have to find another job. Like, it was like 5 minutes, and I was like, oh, that's a major leaguer in the minor leagues. Like, never mind.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people got that impression. That's great. That's a great story. I feel like a lot of people got that impression playing in the minors with Young. Like, there's really something to be said. And I give the Rangers just player development a lot of credit. There's something to be said about a guy who comes to the major leagues right away and is ready, like clicks right away. That's so hard to do. But he was prepared, and I think he's fit in super well with that team of veterans. It's a fun team to watch, man. It really is. And for the record, I just want people to listen. I'm not saying they're my pick to win the World Series at the end of the year. I'm saying right now, in the early part of June, I think they're the healthiest. I think they're the most durable, and I think they're the deepest team. Obviously, subject to change. I mean, last year at this point, everyone was convinced the Dodgers were going to win the World Series. They didn't make it past the NLDS. So we got a long ways to go.
So Josh Young is cool because he's a Texas Tech kid, and he's not from like a bit. I think he's from San Antonio area, And I would just imagine like being a Texas baseball player, coming up and dominating in that, and then going to Texas Tech. You probably would much rather play for A&M and be a Longhorn or go to Arkansas. There's probably so many other places you'd rather go before you go to Texas Tech. And then to be a first rounder from your home state and to get there, and he just looks fabulous. He made his debut in late 2022. He went to spring training. I think they were like interested in giving him the position out of spring training, right?
Yeah.
Was he named the starter before spring training started?
I don't believe so. I think that because I think there was an announcement that he had made the opening day roster. So
there's some, it's not like if you follow the Rangers closely, like you're not surprised that he's playing. You might be a little surprised that he's playing as well as he is playing, you know, in the 2019 first round, by the way, please go back and look at it. Holy smokes. They hit on everybody hit. Everybody fucking hit in that draft, 2019. And then if you go look at the 2020 draft, because I always say the 2020 draft sucks. No, I mean, nobody, those guys, no one will ever make the big leagues from 2020. No one.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that was the Torque draft. So he's probably the only one right now that's at least, and he's struggling.
Oh, dude, he blows. I mean, I'm saying like make it. Like, no offense to Torkelson. Like, I'm saying if you look at the 2020 draft, and we're in the 2023 season, folks, like there should be some pitchers that are like on all-star teams and stuff. The 20, because no one scouted any. You couldn't scout. You couldn't go anywhere. You saw players like in February, and then you had to turn around in May and June and pick first rounders. So these players weren't even playing. That's why the first round sucks. But just in comparison to 2019, this doesn't matter. This was just a point about Josh Young, because as we talk about these names, I understand a lot of people might say, hey, I know this guy from Daily Fantasy, or, you know, I know this guy because I see his name start to pop up a little bit. But a homegrown first round player accelerates through the minors, you know, doesn't get slowed down by COVID at all. And so now the Rangers can mentally check that box at third base with so much confidence, because, well, fuck, dude, we're paying Semien this much, Seager that much. When you're paying him $750,000 for the next 3 seasons, right, and you're paying whatever Nate Lowe's getting, probably not much. There is balance. I guess Seager and Semien make that much money, but what Young does when he comes up and he's able to play right away, now your left side of the infield, sure, you might be paying Seager $30 million, but you're actually only paying 15.6 for each position on the left side of the field, huh?
That's a really good point. And I think, because I remember when it was announced they had signed Seager and Semien, I was like, look, I'm all for spending. This strikes me as irresponsible. They lost 100 games last year. Well, you know what? They've done they've known they knew what they were doing, because they knew they had a good young core in their farm system, and they do what a lot of teams are afraid to do. They spent before they got good. And so by the time Lowe and Young and some of these younger guys arrived, you already have a built-in core with some stars. You already have Seager and Semien, and guess what? You add Eovaldi there now, and DeGrom if he's healthy. So I think that they've done a really good job with their roster construction. I'm looking at this 2020 first-round draft. Okay, Jordan Walker was in that draft.
Get upset for me.
No, I'm just thinking who's going to be the best player to come out of that first round. It might end up being your guy. Now you didn't draft him, but Pete Crow Armstrong might end up being the best player from that draft.
I thought you were going to say Ed Howard, Mount Carmel, Chicago Catholic kid, because that is actually my guy. I love Ed Howard. Bobby Miller went 29th out of that draft, and he looks good for the Dodgers so far. We talked about him on the Wednesday National League show. The teams that did well in that 2020 draft really get a competitive advantage. Like the scouting departments that were able to succeed there. Bryce Elder got drafted in the 2020 draft. He's leading the National League in ERA. This is not the National League show, Carl, but be remiss not to bring him up as we talk about this. The Tigers certainly interesting. Now, the other player that never gets enough credit, we always talk about at the end. I kind of want to set you loose a little bit. Can you like get in your rabid little baseball cage for a minute and just fucking? Yeah. I'm gonna set you free here. I'm gonna say a name, and I just want you to like talk to me as just like a guy who likes baseball but doesn't really know all the mechanics of like. So wait a second, this guy he's from Cuba. He was with the Cardinals. He was an all-star. He's a big prospect. He kind of sucked, and now he's awesome. He's playing out of position in center field. Like, what is going on with Garcia? Who is this Adolis Garcia fella?
I mean, the dude rakes. He's got 49 RBIs already this year in 54 games. I think as early as a week ago, he was on pace for like 175 RBI or something. You know, one thing that I don't. I'll plead ignorance on in baseball is I don't understand how the international free agent stuff works, because really? I've seen, well, just in the sense that let me take that back. I don't understand how it works with my team, because I've seen so many teams like accelerate their rebuilds with these international free agent signings. I don't understand why more teams don't take flyers out on guys. You have a guy from Cuba signed by the Rangers. Since he's come up, he's been he was actually signed by St. Louis. St. Louis then put him, I think, maybe on waivers, and then Texas picked him up. And all he's done with Texas is rake. I mean, when you look at his body, this guy just looks like a baseball. I mean, his physical mold reminds me a lot of Yoenis Cespedes when he was coming up with Oakland, where it's just like, dude, that guy he gets off the bus looking like a major league player. I think that they've, like I talked about with the Rangers lineup construction, I think they've done a good job of making sure that every guy fits a role in that lineup. Garcia, they said to him, look, man, you have a great arm in the outfield, throw guys out. We're not asking you to be somebody who's going to bat 350. You got Seager and Semien in front of you, drive them in. And that's what he's been doing. 14 home runs, 49 RBIs, got an 824 OPS so far this season. I mean, I would argue the most underrated player in baseball. He also year in and year out leads the league in outfield assists. I mean, he's just got an absolute hose for an arm. So, yeah, I mean, I think that that's another guy to me where I knew he was good, didn't expect him to be this good. And it just goes to show, in my opinion, that when you surround your team with good players, it makes other players better. If this lineup was just Adolis Garcia and Josh Young as these young players just trying to find it at the major leagues, they'd be an all right team. They'd be putting up good numbers, but I'm a huge believer in lineup protection. And the fact that you can have Seager and Semien in front of Young and Garcia, I think that that's been a huge boost for these guys' confidence. One thing about Garcia as well that I think makes him such an appealing player and a player that I wish Tigers would find more of, he gets the ball in the air. That's like in the modern age, ground ball machines just kill you. He leads the league in sac flies. He's got 14 home runs. He gets the ball in the air, and I think a big reason for it is allowed. I think that's a big reason for why the Rangers have been able to kind of just keep the line moving consistently night in and night out with that lineup they have.
Yeah, he's probably not hitting higher than 5th in that lineup, though, right? Like
I don't believe so.
Right. It's just a great spot to be in as a talented player. Bonafide Cuban. As much of a Cuban baseball player as you get, great lower half, fucking slings it from the outfield. Holy smokes. I can just see him in like the Cuban blue pants.
Yeah.
Making plays in the World Baseball Classic. So it's interesting the way they put that team together. It's all come together at the right time. And when you talk about the international market, I'll just say briefly, like I kind of look at the international market is how guys chase girls. And like some guys just do well and they've got relationships and they're in it and they've been doing it for a while. And it's very easy to them to navigate the social dynamics of the scouting down there and the money makers and who do you have to pay off to get to the kid's family and the trust and all that stuff. So some organizations are so utterly deeply embedded in there with academies, and businesses and helping and just like legitimately building infrastructure around player development at a young age. And so they're just so like trusted, but there were huge issues with like bribes and people getting paid off. And
really,
I mean, it's a very shady, dark, dirty thing that Major League Baseball doesn't want guys like you and me talking about or learning about, because there's stories of like, people making their careers going down there. Listen, I'm not saying it's organized crime, but the thematically of like, well, why did this guy sign here? Now they've changed it and they've allotted teams international bonus pool money. And so it's kind of more, maybe not more transparent, but certainly more regulated. There's certainly more of this is your budget. There's some more eyeballs on it. It is interesting as a place to accelerate though. It's a place to accelerate. So is there a team? Let's talk let's do a little like round table here at the American League. Okay, let's go back. Let's say historically speaking, when's the first time you can remember being like, wait, where's that guy from? I'll go El Duque. When I remember him in like 96 hearing the story, like El Duque coming over and he was pitching for the Yankees. Now it could have been 96 or 97. It's like late 90s World Series. And he's out on the mound with his funky delivery. And Bob Costas is just going in on this guy. Like he's fucking coming over on a raft. And I'm sitting there looking at my dad, like, who the fuck is this guy? He's like, oh man, this guy will pitch out of any jam.
Yeah. Great postseason pitcher too.
Oh, the jam he got out of in 2005 with the White Sox and in Boston with the bases loaded, nobody out. And that was no joke. That was like Veritek and Manny and Ortiz. Maybe it wasn't like that.
I know Veritek was in there, but it was the Red Sox team that won the World Series the year before. So you're pitching to some good ball players in the postseason, mind you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess one, and it's not so much like, where did he come from as like, how did we get him, that I remember just personally was in 2014, we took a flyer out on a guy that had been released by the Astros, which talk about, it was a while ago, because this is when the Astros were complete shit, like as bad as it gets. And we took a flyer out on this guy who was tearing up AAA, like played 20 games in AAA and he hit like 11 home runs. And we're like, we got to call him up, and was never bad ever again. And his name was JD Martinez. That to me, in my Tigers lifetime, he's the most where in the world did this guy come from guy, because he got released by the Astros following, or in spring training in 2014. His career OPS in 3 seasons with Houston, I believe it was something rough. So career OPS in 3 seasons, 252 games, so large sample size, 687 with an OPS plus of 88. He comes to the Tigers, and the rest of his career, 910 OPS, 141 OPS plus, just started tearing the cover off the ball. And I'm like, where did we get this guy from? Because the Tigers, even in their heyday, were always kind of shitty at that, of just finding guys that they thought could be something and they never were. They do not win the division in 2014 without JD Martinez, and ended up resulting in one of the worst trades they've ever had. But that was one I remember thinking, like, dude, this guy, you talk about somebody who walks on the field and you know he's a major league player. I mean, he's just beating like piss out of the ball. That one was that one always stands out to me as just one of those great pickups. I guess recently, if you want to talk about guys that burst onto the scene, Akil Badu's insane first week as a Rule 5 pick a few years ago was a national story, Carl. But yes, I
nothing dominates Puig. Nothing comes close to Yasiel Puig.
Oh, that's right. Yes,
I thought you were gonna go Yasiel Puig there. You want to do?
I went, yeah. Well, I got to keep it in Tigers, but yes, that first Yasiel Puig week, where, like, I remember that huge discussion in 2013 on sports radio of, like, he'd played 20 games and there were people that were like, should we make him an all-star? Like, because he came up so quickly and was doing everything, and he almost did. I think Freddie Freeman got that final vote over him, but he played like 30 games and was just killing it.
I remember people making the argument about whether or not should be would you rather have Yasiel Puig or Mike Trout?
Yeah.
There was a point in time, but people have to understand, Yasiel Puig came into the big leagues and was throwing dudes out from the warning track at third base. He basically put together like a career's worth of Hall of Fame highlights in the first 2 to 3 weeks. Walk-off bombs. Okay, that's a rabbit hole. I want to come up. I want to get some air. I want to tell you something very interesting about a team in the American League. It's the Minnesota Twins. We laugh at them all the time because they just get dumped on in the playoffs. They're very good at getting on the playoffs. They're terrible at sticking around. Yeah. In 2022, they went 2-15 with a -58 run differential against the Yankees, Astros, and Dodgers. To just say 3 of the great, they finished their 2023 season against them 9-7 with a +9 run differential. Yankees, Astros, and Dodgers, I mean, sure, maybe they're not the exact teams they were last year. They're still a really good team. Is that enough there for the Twins? We say, hey, maybe things are a little bit different. Are we starting to shake some? Can we start to shake some of this Twin stuff, or do we have to wait till October and them to win a playoff series?
It's like a gumdrop of hope. I feel like because to me, I still need to see more. And I mean, they got to. I need them to run away with this division at this point. Like, there's nobody really feasibly who should be competing with them. But that if you're a Twins fan, that should bring you some optimism, because it's something I said on the Power Ranking show. It's something that I've preached really throughout the season. Is I'm confident the Twins will beat up on the Royals. I'm confident they'll beat up on the White Sox and some of the bad teams they've played. But we've seen that before. What's really going to prove whether or not this is a team that can make a run in the postseason is how you playing against Houston, how you playing against the Yankees. And so far, look, they just took 2 out of 3 against Houston on the road. In Minute Maid, Hunter Brown was on the mound yesterday. They got to him. That's very exciting. I think that now the next step is you got to start pulling off some of these series wins, like 6 or 7 in a row, to really kind of get yourself in position to be that 90-win team that can go into the postseason playing confident. But look, if you remove the Twins label, like if you just looked at their roster, you'd say, yeah, this is a team that can be really competitive. I feel like often they rarely have everyone firing on all cylinders at the same time. Like, you've gotten some great pitching this year, and yet Correa is having like the worst year of his career. I have a lot of question marks about that offense, but there's definitely hope there. I mean, there's good leadership in that clubhouse. It's a good team. It's just one I think all of us, understandably so, are going to continue to doubt until they start proving it and not over. I mean, there's just such a large sample size of them coming up short that it's hard to ever believe, but that is a sign, positive sign for them for sure.
Staying in that division, I saw something interesting. Lance Lynn had given up 7 runs for the 3rd time this season in a start. And it's easy to shit on Jerry Reinsdorf and Tony La Russa and a lot of the stuff that's happened with the White Sox, maybe injuries. Rick Hahn skated to me. Rick Hahn has been able to skate through this fucking thing because people are like, well, it doesn't have the money to spend. You know, he's a fucking Kenny Williams is in there and all that fucking. Let me just be clear here. Rick Hahn did not have to go out and give Lance Lynn $40 million fucking dollars during the middle of an all-star season after they had traded away Dane Dunning for him. Like, we know you gave Dane Dunning away. Dane Dunning's turned out to be fine. He's gonna be much, much better than Lance Lynn over the time you've had the two of them. But now that he looks like absolute butt cheeks and he's got a strong ass fucking personality to be in that clubhouse. You know, sometimes somebody outside Chicago should have the courage to point a finger at Rick Hahn. And I know he does great sound bites. He's a great guy in an interview. He's good in media. He's a nice man. He's a good man. He deserves better than Jerry Reinsdorf. Yeah. But this Lance Lynn and how bad Lance Lynn has been this year, I think that's 100% on Rick Hahn for the Lance Lynn extension, and it just doesn't make sense to me.
Honestly, as early as a year ago at this time, I would have said, all right, look, give it some time. The core is there. You've had some injuries. The way the White Sox have performed this year, it's one of those seasons where, like, if anyone keeps their job, I feel like you're kind of like, you kind of need to reevaluate things. Like, this is one of those. And when we talked about it even before the season, we all kind of acknowledged it's make or break for them. Like, it seems like you, for the most part, have your core healthy again. Like, there's no reason why you shouldn't be, if not competing and winning this division. And yeah, I mean, I feel like Lance Lynn is kind of the ultimate reflection of what's happened to this ball club, where, like, Lynn, when he's on, he's just pumping fastballs by guys. Very fun pitcher to watch. I mean, the amount of plate that his off-speed pitches are catching right now is just staggering. He threw, I mean, the meatball he threw to Trout yesterday was just ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, I pushed back against it for a long time because I did, and it got, time flies again. I did at the time, 4 or 5 years ago, or even longer, give Rick Hahn a lot of credit for the way they built this thing at the time, the trades they made. Now it's like, okay, you got steps 1 and 2. You have completely failed with step 3. And I think if this continues, which I have no reason to believe it won't, there's going to be a lot of people out of jobs on the South Side. And if there isn't, there's going to be a mutiny because they have no future right now with their current core.
They don't. They do not. No. You know, Michael Kopech has been outstanding his last couple starts. I know he wasn't great on the 29th. He pitched against the Angels. He struck out 10 though. He did strike out 10. His last 3 starts, he struck out 10, 9, and 10. He did give up 4 earned though against the Angels. That was a tough loss. But he has looked phenomenal, and you've heard that his stuff looks different now. So it's surprising. I bring up Kopech is like, well, why did you give Lance Lynn a 2-year extension for $38 million with a team option when you have young arms emerging and you've got plenty of question marks at second base and right field? And so just some confusing stuff. Now, again, though, we said at the top, and I believe this again, like, I'm not out on the White Sox, and I'm not out on them making a run and getting hot in July and Pedro Grifral's message fucking hitting with these boys. I feel comfortable, I guess, Guardians wise. I know you watch a lot of Guardians baseball. Yeah. When do you think their run starts now? We know they've got a run coming where they go 18-23. Do you think that now? Is it 2 weeks from now?
They beat up the Orioles yesterday as of the time of this recording, scored 12 runs, which is, and I was watching when I was in Detroit last week, Jason Benetti was doing the broadcast because they were on Fox, and they said that team is averaging, as of, I think it was Sunday, 2.9 runs per game at home, which would be, I believe, the lowest in franchise history. I'm not saying it's a great offense. They are way better than 2.9 runs per game at Progressive Field. Like, I think they will come around to a certain point. Tristan McKenzie is coming back, I believe, this week. That's a huge step for them. They're a team that's going to have some very interesting decisions to make because I saw this, I read it today, and I feel like it just made a ton of sense. One piece that no one's talking about being available at the deadline, Shane Bieber.
Oh, interesting.
We know the Guardians, even if they're hovering around 500, how consistent they are with selling high on their starting pitchers. I mean, they were in a playoff chase when they traded Bauer, and they traded Kluber when his
DC Sabathia,
Kluber, Cliff Lee, like I think it would not shock me if we see Bieber Goodell. Now, again, it's one of those things where 2 weeks from now, I'm going to know, because I could easily see the Guardians going 10-4 in their next 14 games. And all of a sudden they take off and they're in first place. And I could see them hovering, at 500 for that stretch. I feel like, in the next few weeks, we're really going to decide what the identity of this team is. I don't think there's any reason to panic. Their future is still bright. They have a good farm system, coming up, I think 7 in the top 100. But the one detriment they have is they do not spend a ton of money. I think it's safe to say Bieber's pitched his best baseball. Still a wonderful pitcher, but it would not shock me to see him on the move, because I just feel like they don't see a World Series window right now with this current group.
Yeah, and I mean, their World Series window is like around Jason Kipnis's career. That's kind of where I see.
I thought last year it might have opened back up with the way they played, and I still like that core. But I don't know if Bieber's a part of that. I mean, Bieber's been around here. I think his first year was 18. I mean, so we're talking like, there's been a lot of turnover since he's been in Cleveland. They have been nothing if not consistent with selling high on their starting pitchers. So
yeah. Now we do so much on the East. We really do. So we do so much in the power ranking show, and I believe we have something coming up for like a Red Sox Yankees thing. I think we're going to do that. So we spent a lot of time last week talking about the Yankees and kind of getting the East a little bit. I think we're going to hold off for Red Sox next week. And maybe then it would be prudent to kind of revisit with the Orioles. Because at the time of recording, the Orioles, they're 30, I believe they're 35-21 or something to that effect. They've got the second best record in baseball, or tied for the second best win percentage in baseball. So they're very strong. A lot of the same concerns that we've had. I think, as we sit here today, it's disappointing that they sent Grayson Rodriguez down. We talked about that this week already. We'll have more time to kind of revisit like what the repercussions are that. I'm interested to see what he does in the minor leagues. Mm-hmm. And now I think it's kind of shitty that his name is going to start to be in trade talks. Like, that's how bad the Orioles are at bringing their pitchers along. That when at the start of the season, this guy was a top 3 pitching prospect in baseball. One of the surefire guys, like, oh, dude, if they get Grayson going, they're going to fucking dominate the playoffs. And now it's June 1st and people are on social media being like, well, would you do this if they give up Grayson? Like, shame on the Orioles for even putting that kid in a position where people like you and me are talking about him in this context. That's fucking trash.
Yeah, that is a bizarre circumstance. I still like his stuff, obviously, but I think that, and you talked about it a few weeks ago, like, when was the last time the Orioles developed a great starting pitcher? I mean, they had a few guys that were good. Like Chris Tillman.
Mike Mussina. I say it all the time and no one believes me. I think you're right. Mike Mussina.
I mean, they've had multiple guys who have been there, didn't perform, and went elsewhere. And like Gausman just turned his career around. He went to Atlanta.
The second he left.
Yeah, but like the second he found that splitter all of a sudden. Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry. I want to apologize. I'm getting worked up here.
You're right, though, because I think they have done a masterful job of developing a core of position players. I love that offense. And it's not as if they've forgotten, but I really think they've kind of put all their hopes and dreams on Grayson Rodriguez hitting right away. And I'm not saying the guy's not going to develop into a good major league pitcher, but you are in a pennant race right now. And I think it's unfair to rely on a guy who's like 8 starts into his career. And now he's been sent down. He got hammered. That start that he had against the Rangers, where they just teed off on him, that was ugly to watch. So, I mean, I think that, especially they gave up 12 yesterday to Cleveland. I think that as much as I like the Orioles, the cracks in the foundation when it comes to their starting pitching is finally beginning to show. I felt like it was going to rear its ugly head at some point, but they've done a good job. They've had a great bullpen all year, at least the back end of the pen, and they have an offense that's capable of outslugging you. You can outslug teams in May. You can outslug teams in the early part of the season. The deeper it goes, I feel like you're going to need your starting pitching to really, and your bullpen as well, to really be nails. I don't know if they're deep enough to be able to do that right now.
Now, does anybody know, can we put out a search alert? Is Dylan Bundy still in baseball?
Good question. He was the next one I was thinking of, because I think he had a good year in the COVID year, then fell off again.
I mean, it was like this time and again.
But he's only
we're gonna go get him. He's the best. He's gonna be the next best thing. Brian Mattis was gonna be the next best thing. Tommy Hunter. I mean, fucking Jake got sent down to AAA like 4 times in like a calendar year. Get the fuck out of here, man. Like, what are we doing? Like, come on. What are we doing? Just let us pitch. So that'll be like the Orioles Achilles heel, and they are dealing with just a cataclysmic amount of obstacles off the field. Awful ownership, thin front office, fucking fans are like, fans want it, and you give them a small taste, and when it's not there, Baltimore fans are unruly. There's going to be issues with these contract extensions coming up, whether you like it or not. Like, if the idea of Adley Rutschman being an Oriole for life isn't just burned into your head right now, that he's not going to end up doing all this shit for the Yankees at some point, because he's a purist, man. I don't think he gives a fuck. He's an Oregon kid. I don't think wearing that orange and black means shit to him. No matter what anybody wants to say, I think he's a pure professional who wants to build his legacy and be as good of a player as he can. So if you're going to tell me right now that Adley Rutschman cares about the Orioles and is like more than a professional would, like, if you're telling me that he like bleeds for the Orioles because they drafted him, he's like, I'm going first overall. I'm the best fucking player in the world. I'll play wherever I want. That's how I think he is deep down inside.
Yeah, I think he loves playing there, but there's no chance he's giving him a hometown discount when that extension talk comes. Like, it's because I think with Adley, it goes beyond just baseball to me. Like, I think Adley, when you look at mental makeup, personality, what the position he plays, I think Adley Rutschman could be one of the faces of baseball. And I think he can, like, when you look at endorsement deals and shit like that, like, this guy can make bank. I don't know. And he's in a second year. I don't know if he feels like that's something that can happen in Baltimore. I'm not sure. I'd love to see it. Like, I would like to see Adley play his whole career in Baltimore. I mean, he's their guy. But the decisions will have to be made. I think as early as this season, they're going to be talking about extension talk with him.
Why is he any different than Buster Posey? Can someone tell me? Good OBP, not crazy slug, awesome catcher, handles his staff, leadership, team wins as soon as he comes up. I think it's just because he hits lefty and Buster Posey hit righty. Something is missing from people's brains. Buster Posey is the most valuable catcher per game played in the history of baseball. That is a fucking absolute fact. Adley Rutschman is close behind there. He's in that kind of conversation. The profile is nearly identical.
Yeah, fuck, Posey was so good, man. And he went out on top. Buster Posey's another one. I know we had the Hall of Fame discussion about him. He had 3 years left in him at least. Like, his last year was like an all-star caliber campaign. So yeah, no, I mean, I love Adley. I like what the Orioles are doing. I do think we're starting to reach that point. We even talked about it a little bit last week, where it's like, okay, how real are you? They're another team. Like, I'm confident they make the playoffs, but is it too early to jump on that World Series bandwagon? I feel like it might be, at least in 2023.
Hey, last thing I got for you. I think the Rays have a huge problem. Ready?
Go on.
Big problem. This is a problem that has not really been exposed yet. I don't think in baseball is they got a changeup problem. They have a huge changeup problem. They look like shit against Marcus Stroman's changeup. They look shit against Kyle Hendricks' changeup. People don't throw the changeup very much anymore. To get to the big leagues as a dominant starting pitcher, the last thing you're working with is a fucking changeup. The changeup resurgence will come. It's been a while, folks. It has been a while since Cole Hamels and Cliff Lee were out there fucking making you look silly with it. But that was just my take. Stroman did a lot of damage with the changeup, and Hendricks did it. Now, there's something about that. I do think it has more to do with the fact that, like, you don't see a ton of changeups in baseball anymore these days, so that when you do see a good one, it's a little bit more funky. Now, Stroman doesn't even have that good of a changeup relative to Hendricks. He just has feel for it, and he can throw it. So I think when he went into that start, he was like, I'm going to throw this changeup more. Now, I'm not here to talk about the Cubs. I just watch the games closely because I'm a Cubs fan. And so my big takeaway with the Rays was like, Achilles heel. Achilles heel, because a lot of those players are mixed and match platoon wise for swing paths on fastball, slider, and to be able to match up well against power stuff. Like, the Rays lineup is an anti-power stuff thing. Like, they're just fucking grind at bats. They're going to make you throw a fastball over the middle of the plate. They're going to smash it. I don't know if people pitch as much anymore aggressively to contact in out. I'm going to challenge you. I want to see you work. Why don't you go do some work? Yeah. Stroman and Hendricks did that back to back to the Rays. And I was nervous for Hendricks because I was like, well, the fucking Rays just saw Stroman. They're going to tee off on Hendricks. So it was 2 games in a row where the Rays both struggled, both got, there wasn't huge turnover to the lineups between back-to-back days. So I don't know if that was like just funky stuff because it's day baseball at Wrigley Field. They hadn't seen these guys, they probably have never seen Kyle Hendricks, if maybe once before. Maybe some of those guys probably haven't seen Stroman in fucking years. Who would have been on that team when he was in the Blue Jays? Nobody. So I'm just putting this out there now. I like to do this. I got in front of this with the Padres that not so fast, everybody. And I want to say not so fast about the Rays. And I think some of these challenges they could run into, like now, where would this come into play? Nestor Cortez in game 3 of an ALCS would be an issue. Luis Castillo would be an issue.
Ooh. He's filthy, man. God,
I know he's an issue for everybody.
I
think what we're looking
Luis
for
Castillo.
are those guys, who are those guys in a 3-4, 1-2s, whatever. But who are those 3-4s, funky 3-4s that could give the Rays issues? And if I was an AL team, like the Rangers or the Orioles that had the playoffs in mind, but you still have another level to get to match up against the Rays. Like, I don't know. There was something about the changeup. I'm interested to dig into some of the data, or if there's someone out there who has the same sentiment about the changeup matchup for the Rays, please, by all means, my door is open.
That's a really interesting point. Honestly, I didn't even think about that. I was able to watch the Stroman start. I wasn't able to watch the Hendricks start, but because basically that Rays offense so far this year, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, has been invincible until that series against the Cubs. It's like you're trying to find a crack in the armor. Maybe that's it. And that's an interesting point you make about the changeup as a whole. Because like when I was, watching baseball in my teens, you bring up Hamels. Like Hamels, when Hamels was making that World Series run in 2008, all people talk, he's got that circle change, just unhittable. He's not. And now I feel like it went from changeup to that we had the knuckle curve revolution for a while. And then everyone got finger blisters, blew out their arms. So now it's the sweeper. Now the sweeper is the big craze. I feel like the next one is we revert back to the age of the changeup. Because I feel like we've gotten away from it. You're right. It's been hard sliders, curveballs, and cutters. And now I feel like we got to get back to that pitch that dives down.
Though we did have there's a blessing in baseball, the 4-seam fastball upstairs. I want to thank the baseball gods for putting that one back into the repertoire. Hey, there was a long time when I was in college, people were like, what are you doing? Pitch to the top of the zone? Like people were like, top of zone? Dude, fastball down and away. That's what the Cardinals do. That's what the Cardinals have always done. So it's been cool to see how the data and the analytics that come into baseball. And you would assume that means more funky and more this and that, but there are some truisms of it where it's like, no, actually, dude, high fucking spin rate, top of the zone plays. Really? No, it's proven. It's in the data. So I like that. I like that a lot. I'm comfortable. We've covered a lot. I want to talk about the Red Sox next week. I think we're going to have some programming for Red Sox Yankees on Sunday night. There's some stuff with Omaha. I'm not comfortable announcing yet because I haven't gotten these hotel rooms approved yet. We're around the league though, boys. This is a great show. We touched a lot. The Mariners, you'll get there. Angels, you're going to get it. One of these weeks, we're going to come here and go heavy on the West Coast with you folks. Chris, big plans for the weekend?
This weekend, not a whole lot. The next week, I'll be in Chicago here maybe our team's in it, maybe they're not, for the dozen next week. And I got a birthday celebration as well. That's celebration. I don't know what I'll be doing, but I'll be in Chicago for that. So.
That's next week?
Yeah, June 9th. Yeah.
June 9th. Oh, boy. You know what I meant. Come on. Well, June 9th?
Yeah. Birthday's the 9th, and then dozens on the 8th.
But your birthday's June 9th?
Mm-hmm.
We got to get you to 69 and check on June 9th. Like an older lady. Internet's a little unstable here, but I think I just heard a yes. This is Barstool Baseball. This is the Friday American League.
Yeah, why not?
I'm Carl. That's Chris Castellani. His birthday is June 9th, ladies. I'm in a good mood. The weather's very nice. We've had a great week. I was serious about that shit about the 14 episodes in May because, like a little behind the sausage. Like, we have I think I made 9 of them, and it's been a fun process to work on this with you. Mm-hmm. And so 14 episodes in May, and so in June, if we're on site somewhere, I think 16 is the sweet spot. I think 16 is the number in June. We're going to try and get to. It's been fun. The show's growing. I like the storylines that we're building around these teams. Very comfortable with it. I hope you have a great weekend, Chris. I hope everybody listening has a great weekend. Subscribe to our stuff. We'll be back on Monday. Until next time, talk soon.